to say, "Welcome to the green pastures. Isn't it nice here?" But John turned round for one more look at the old church where as a baby he had been baptized, and where he had gone with his father every Sunday to sing the hymns. High up in one of the belfry windows he saw the little church goblin with his pointed red cap, raising one arm to keep the sun out of his eyes. John nodded goodbye to him, and the little goblin waved his red cap, put his hand on his heart, and kissed his fingertips to him again and again, to show that he wished John well and hoped that he would have a good journey. As John thought of all the splendid things he would see in the fine big world ahead of him, he walked on and on, farther away than he had ever gone before. He did not even know the towns through which he passed, nor the people whom he met. He was far away among strangers. The first night he slept under a haystack in the fields, for he had no other bed, but he thought it very comfortable, and the king himself could have no better. The whole field, the brook, the haystack, and the blue sky overhead made a glorious bedroom. The green grass patterned with red and white flowers was his carpet. The elder bushes and hedges of wild roses were bouquets of flowers, and for his washbowl he had the whole brook full of clear fresh water. The reeds nodded their heads to wish him both good night and good morning. The moon was really a huge night lamp, high up in the blue ceiling where there was no danger of its setting fire to the bed curtains. John could sleep peacefully, and sleep he did, never once waking until the sun rose and all the little birds around him began singing, "Good morning, good morning. Are you up yet?" The church bells rang, for it was Sunday. People went to hear the preacher, and John went with them. As he sang a hymn and listened to God's word, he felt just as if he were in the same old church where he had been baptized, and where he had sung the hymns with his father. There were many, many graves in the churchyard, and some were overgrown with high grass. Then John thought of his own father's grave, and how it too would come to look like those, now that he could no longer weed and tend it. So he knelt down to weed out the high grass. He straightened the wooden crosses that had fallen, and replaced the wreaths that the wind had blown from the graves. "Perhaps," he thought, "someone will do the same for my father's grave, now that I cannot take care of it." Outside the churchyard gate stood an old beggar, leaning on his crutch, and John gave him the few pieces of silver that he had. Happy and high-spirited, John went farther on, out into the wide world. Toward nightfall, the weather turned dreadfully stormy. John hurried along as fast as he could to find shelter, but it soon grew dark. At last he came to a little church which stood very lonely upon a hill. Fortunately, the door was ajar, and he slipped inside to stay until the storm abated. "I'll sit down here in the corner," he said, "for I am very tired and need a little rest." So he sat down, put his hands together, and said his evening prayer. Before he knew it, he was fast asleep and dreaming, while it thundered and lightened outside. When he woke up, it was midnight. The storm had passed, and the moon shone upon him through the window. In the middle of the church stood an open coffin, and in it lay a dead man awaiting burial. John was not at all frightened. His conscience was clear, and he was sure that the dead do not harm anyone. It is the living who do harm, and two such harmful living men stood beside the dead one, who had been put here in the church until he could be buried. They had a vile scheme to keep him from resting quietly in his coffin. They intended to throw his body out of the church, the helpless, dead man's body. "Why do you want to do such a thing?" John asked. "It's a sin and a shame. In heaven's name, let the man rest." "Stuff and nonsense!" the two evil men exclaimed. "He cheated us. He owed us money which he could not pay, and now that he's cheated us by dying, we shall not get a penny of it. So we intend to revenge ourselves. Like a dog, he shall lie outside the church door." "I have only $50, John cried. "It's my whole inheritance. But I'll give it to you gladly, if you will solemnly promise to let the poor dead man rest in peace. I can do without the money. I have my healthy, strong arms, and heaven will always help me." "Well, certainly," the villainous fellows agreed. "If you are willing to pay his debt, we won't lay a hand on him. You can count on that." They took the money he gave them and went away, roaring with laughter at his simplicity. John laid the body straight again in its coffin, folded its hands, and took his leave. He went away through the great forest, very well pleased. All around him, wherever moonlight fell between the trees, he saw little elves playing.